So I guess if you ever want to experiment what it's like to be winter camping, it's best to do it close to a home. So here we are, Delta, Colorado. It is going to freeze tonight. I know that I've got my temperature sensor underneath the camper. I've got the indoor-outdoor temperature device in the camper so I can see the temperature. 3 hours ago, it was 32 degrees out here. So I also have the tank heaters that I installed on the Geo Pro last year. We didn't ever need them. They are running right now. I felt under there to make sure they're all working correctly, and they are indeed warm. The other thing too is we're using water in the tank. There is no freshwater hose connected from the house to the camper. When you're doing winter camping, that's not a good thing to do. Don't have a hose connected all the time. Take your hose, fill your tank up, and then take your hose, roll it up, and put it away. You know, get all the water out and put it away, rather than leave it connected to your freshwater and city water outlet. Don't do that. So that is what we've got so far. It is definitely cold out here. Starting to snow. This will definitely be the first night that we've ever been in this kind of weather with the Geo Pro. Hopefully everything will turn out okay. My mom's camper is all winterized and all good to go, so that project's done. We will winterize our camper just before we head back to Iowa. All right, so I don't want to risk too much here. It's cold, man. It is 22 degrees out here. Look at all the snow. So I've got one little heater going here that's 250 watts. I purchased that because all the AC outlets in this camper go through the inverter, even if you're not using solar. And the inverter is only about 10 or 11 amps, 12 amps, something like that. So a 1500 watt heater will throw the breaker. So I just got a nice little low power heater, and I'm running that right there to help heat over this part of the camper and not use up all our propane for heating this part of the camper at least. Then you saw earlier, about a month ago, I got this new controller installed with the heat element up above. Now that heat element above is 1500 watts, and that will run on straight AC from outside the camper, and it will not run through the inverter. So you won't be tripping the breaker on the inverter if you use a little heater on this. Now keep in mind, this heater in here is really not designed to heat this camper in 22 degree weather. It is blowing out warm air, even though the heat element is actually kind of on top of the camper exposed. It alone is able to keep it around 65 degrees by itself so far. But then what I have is also, you still want to run the propane heat. It'll help keep hot by the water lines in the camper and stuff like that. So I've got that set as well to kick on at about 65, 67 degrees. So when it gets to where these two electric heaters can't keep it up and it gets down to 65, it'll turn that on. But another thing I'm doing to make sure we have hot water in the lines, and I talked about this last year. I take and turn on the water miser, and I turn on the hot water until I just hear a drizzle. You can just barely hear a drizzle, so you know water's going through. That's going to take water from the hot water tank and pump it all the way along the line, all the way to the shower, and then back, all the way back into the freshwater tank. So when I tested this last year, of course it wasn't brutal cold. By the time morning came, there was actually hot water coming out of the cold spigot. So my thought on that is you can extend your propane life as far as heating the camper by using electric, if you've got access to electric, by doing these methods. And you can make sure the water gets hot where it needs it in the actual water line. I am using propane right now on the hot water heater, but that's not going to use that much, I don't think, compared to heating forced air into the camper. The pump kicks on every couple minutes for about 5 seconds and then turns off. It's not like the pump is running excessive. It's not like a huge gallons and gallons of water going, but what I'm doing is I'm assuring the water in the system is hot. We'll see what that does. We'll see how it comes out tomorrow. I know before I started doing this, the water from the cold water faucet here in the bathroom was ice cold. In fact, let's test it again. It's been going for probably about 20 minutes. I'm going to just see if it's still ice cold. It's not ice cold, but it's still pretty cold. So we will see how that feels in the morning, or we will see if everything is frozen over. All right, you guys have a great night. This could be a total nightmare. This is how you learn, right? Compared to all the issues I've had with this camper, doing everything right, this is kind of a sketchy situation anyway. I'm sure it's going to go sideways, but we'll see what happens. One other thing I forgot, you should open your cabinets so that hot air can get underneath the sink here. I'm going to just open these drawers a crack so that air can get under there. Most of the lines are actually underneath the camper, and that's all insulated. So let's see how the water miser does. I turned the furnace up a little more. The electric one that's in the AC and that little one down there are only able to keep it at best 65 degrees in here, and it'll probably keep going down. The pump, I've only noticed it kick on a couple times. It hardly ever does, and I've yet to hear the hot water heater turn on. So I'm just going to test this again. As you saw, it's 20 degrees now outside. It's probably about 1 a.m. Doesn't feel any colder. Let's see how the hot feels. Hot feels about the same. So actually that stands to reason. If the hot is putting out cold water right now until you pump it through the lines, the cold is obviously not going to ever feel like warm water until you pump a lot out. Now I could, out of curiosity, see what it feels like here in the shower. Let's see. Well, the water's still going, but it's not enough water pressure to even make it up the shower. So I may actually have to turn that up a little more than a trickle. But I know water's making it through because you can hear it and the pump does kick off. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and, instead of doing this based on sound, I'm going to do it by water volume. So basically, I've got enough water here that when it's on, it just drizzles out of the faucet like that. So that's what I'm going to use to gauge this. So when it's drizzling like that, then I'll throw on the miser, and then it'll be like my test last year, which it kicks on about once for about 3 seconds every minute. That actually made the fresh water tank by the next morning warm water. Again, it only got down to like 40 degrees that night. So I'm not expecting the same results, but I'm going to use that as my measurement, just to where we see a little drizzle coming out of the shower head, and that's the volume of flow that I will set it before turning the water miser on. Now, let's see how things progress. Alright, so here we are, and I'm enjoying our poor man's adjustable bed that I built, sitting up here watching Star Trek Enterprise, and it's in stereo because I fixed the stupid speaker configuration on the sound system so it actually sounds decent. And I got a little place here that I can set my remotes, and we are actually quite comfy even though it's 20 degrees and falling outside. So want to watch my show? See you guys in the morning. Hopefully we won't have frozen pipes. Alright, ignore the time. I didn't set this after putting a battery in. But this has been sitting in the window at the front of the camper, and it said 56 degrees. So that's the temperature in the actual windowsill at the front of the camper, and it's currently 15 degrees outside. Now, I don't know if it mattered that I ran the water miser all night. Make sure we don't have any leaks. The water level's at the same, so no water's leaking out, so that's good. The pump, actually, I timed it, was actually going off about once every 30 seconds for about 2-3 seconds, which I don't think is going to wear out the pump. Overall comfort level of the trailer is fine. It is a little chilly right next to the wall, of course. Nothing is frozen, so that's good. And between running the little electric heater, the heater at 75 degrees on the ceiling, and the furnace set roughly at about, I'm going to guess, about 68 to 70 degrees. You can't tell because it doesn't have a real thermostat. I want to change that. We're running, it's probably about 50% of the time it's running furnace heat as opposed to just the electric heat. So the electric heat will kick on, it'll run for a while, and then the furnace heat will kick on, and it'll actually help circulate the furnace heat, because the furnace heat goes all the way to the ceiling. It's hot. That heat is really hot, but it sits up at the ceiling. But that seems to work really well. The first 3 days we were here, which was, we started propane for the refrigerator on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning I changed the tank. So that was 3 days. Now that tank I had accidentally left in the open position for a little bit, plus I used it a couple days in Iowa when it was warmer. So that tank really doesn't tell us a whole lot, but we could say 3 to 5 days is what we got out of that tank. And then we switched over to this other tank. That'd be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And now today's Monday. It's probably going to run out sometime today, we will see, but that'll put us at 4 days again. But that's pretty good. We'll see how it goes. Now, it'd be really cool to see how it goes with if this one tank will still continue out to tomorrow, because we're still supposed to have below freezing weather tonight as well. So it would be nice to know, you know, hey, a tank is going to get you at least 2 days of freezing cold weather. I'll keep you posted on that. All right, so this is day 2 of the freezing weather. So I was looking at the weather for yesterday. It says the overall low for yesterday combined was 5 degrees for the coldest part of yesterday. And the high for yesterday was 18. So that's cold. That's cold. We had no issues with the pipes at all. After the sun was up, I turned the water miser off. I don't know that we need to. Again, I just was doing it as precaution because it would give extra water down that side of the trailer. See, you have a heater duct that's going under the kitchen sink and all that, so there's warmth that would come from that. But I don't know where the water lines are exactly ran for the bathroom. Do they go the same direction as the kitchen sink and then cross over, or do they come a straight line from the fresh water? Yesterday's low, of course, the 5 degrees carried over to today, and today the lows so far were as low as 1 degree, and we're not having any issues. There's no issues. And that's with the water miser turned on the shower with the valve only enough that it kicks the pump on every 5 minutes. The Geo Pro, I didn't really have to do any modifications to it. Out of the box, the only thing I added was $150 worth of tank heaters, which go to my thejohnnyoshow.com/promotions, and you will find the tank heaters that I purchased from Amazon, plus a selection of other tank heaters. They have AC powered tank heaters and DC powered tank heaters. I went with AC just because I didn't want to have to run as big as wire as if I ran DC, and I figured the tank heaters aren't going to be running on battery anyway because they're going to draw too much current. So that's why I went AC. You're going to have a higher amp requirement for DC heaters, and that means running, 15 feet of heavier wire to get it from power all the way back to where the tank heaters are and stuff. So that was my reason for going AC. So far, it hasn't been a reason to be of concern. So, all right. Hope you found this beneficial. Have a great afternoon. All right. So last night I did an experiment at my risk and not yours. I ran the water miser a little bit less to where I could barely just hear it. I didn't hardly ever hear the pump kick on, and pipes started to freeze. So, a couple of the things I'm thinking about with winter time. I started knocking the ice off already, but you probably should knock any ice off, and I'm going to sweep off this later. You should probably sweep all the snow off so that you don't have all this weight on your slide out. Be aware of that. Something I didn't think about. Knock your ice off, sweep off the slide out, because that's extra weight. It probably really is not good for it. The other thing is the tank heaters are running, but clearly it's having a hard time keeping up. So I think I'm going to probably put a little bit of wrap around the tanks themselves, some kind of insulative wrap. Ideally, if I had ran the water miser more, then that water would have been warmer anyway. I think it's because I didn't hardly run it last night. The shower miser, sorry, I've been calling it water miser, I mean shower miser. I know this is not what it's intended for, but it clearly has its benefit for this because it forces hot water into the fresh water tank. Definitely make it so it'll trickle. Also, this is now 3 days of below freezing weather. This is on day 3. So this is a great test of this. So let me show you what I got. Okay, you can hear the water. I just went ahead and cranked this full bore, threw the water miser on, and there is water going through. You can see here it's struggling, but it is going through. Cool part is cold water is good too, so at least it's not completely frozen. Here, it's coming out a little better since I turned this on full bore, but it was hardly coming out at all when I woke up this morning about 7 a.m. Hot water was not coming out at all, but at least we have a trickle. Let me turn off this, make sure it's just not coming back through the shower miser. So we have hot water starting to come through. It wasn't like frozen solid, so I don't think I damaged anything except for this. This is frozen solid. Nothing's coming out. So here's what I know so far. 2 days below freezing, not an issue. Definitely use the shower miser to help circulate hot water into the tank. Not an issue. Going on 3 days, be concerned. If you're going on 3 days, don't dual purpose the heater above and the heater below to save gas. Just run solid propane. You're gonna have more heat going along the pipes in the camper from that duct work underneath the kitchen sink. Also, someone shut the drawers last night, so there was no airflow going into the drawers, but probably would not have been an issue had we used nothing but the furnace. So I'll keep you posted if we have any long-term damage and what it's going to take to get out of the situation. All right, so we just got back from Grand Junction. Robin called about an hour ago. She said the pipes were still frozen. She cranked the heat up really, really high. It's pretty warm in here. Hope it's not leaking water. We'll find out. I don't see water anywhere on the floor. When I left this morning, of course, the trailer was completely covered in ice on the front. That is all clear. It is about 40 degrees now outside. She cranked up the heat. It was still iced in here. These sinks are thawed and working now. She said they weren't working before. Let's see if we've lost water. No, we're still at 3/4 of a tank, so we're not leaking. Let's see if this is working. All right, we got water here again. Okay, so this is my assessment so far. The water miser thing I think did help, but I didn't open it enough last night to really do anything. Also, the issue was I was turning it off during the day. I just turned it on at night. We'd been below freezing. I should have probably just left the water miser going. You know, where it kicked on every 5 minutes and put water in there. 3 days is probably pushing it without some modifications. One thing you could do is if you know the weather is definitely going to be really cold for several days, don't worry about conserving propane and just run the propane heat. Don't run electric, because the propane heat would allow heat to be generated down where the pipes are at because of the duct work. So that's rule number one. So I guess that's my takeaway so far. It doesn't appear that anything's damaged. It doesn't appear that we have any water leaks. Everything seems good. So what I'm thinking of adding, just so that I have them, is something like those water misers. They make them for home as well. I'm going to connect them to the bathroom sink, one to the kitchen sink, so that I can have a trickle going through all the lines 24/7 if I want to, when we're not using the water, to help alleviate this situation. The other upgrade, like I said, is putting some kind of foam insulation wrap or something around the tanks themselves. I felt that heater this morning and I couldn't even tell if it was working. I'm gonna go check it now that it's warmed up, but it was so cold that I hope the heater didn't go out. Maybe that's why this happened. Insulation around the tank would help prevent this from getting as bad as it did. Also, I do think I need to get some heat tape and put it around the drain valves and the freshwater drain valve, because I don't have anything on those yet. So I guess that's 3 upgrades. At least I have a baseline of what to expect for winter camping with this camper, and you have to learn somehow, right? So again, I don't think it did too bad. Fortunately, I didn't damage anything. That's what you can expect from this camper stock, other than adding tank heaters. 2 days of freezing, you should be safe. Beyond that, you're gonna have to do more preparations. Look, Mom, no ice. So this is finally melted off. There's a little bit in here. I need to check the weather because I want to make sure this is clear or we're not getting out of here because we won't be able to shut it if it's got ice all in it. And I'm going to winterize this Friday. But we look good here. So another thing to keep in mind, like, is your schedule. You need to look at weather. And if you're supposed to depart, you might want to put your slide in before you see bad weather coming that would cause it to be frozen where you can't put your slide in, because you can't very well drive down the road if your slide's out. So again, that is something that fortunately it is getting hotter, but like if this had happened the day before we wanted to leave and the slide was out, we wouldn't be going anywhere. So keep those little things in mind.